Hi, everybody. Happy to have you here in the locker room. I'm Alan Locher. Today, we're heading back to Seaview Circle with two of Knots Landing's original stars, Constance McCashin and John Pleshette. As Laura and Richard Avery, they drove some of the most unforgettable storylines on the show, and more than 40 years later, their bond and friendship remains strong. But there's more beyond Seaview Circle. Constance, after 9 seasons as Laura Avery, stepped away from acting and found a new calling. She earned her master's in social work, spent over a decade counseling, and today works as a licensed psychotherapist in Massachusetts, helping others with compassion and insight. John, who portrayed the conflicted Richard Avery and returned briefly in 1987, didn't just act. He also wrote several scripts and directed episodes of Knots Landing in the early 80s. His career spans decades, appearing in acclaimed shows like The Sopranos, Curb Your Enthusiasm, and MacGyver, plus films like The Truman Show. Please help me welcome. It is my pleasure to welcome Constance McCashin and John Pleshette to the locker room.
Hello there.
Hi, Hello Alan. There. Hi, John.
How are Thank you both for being here. Thank you, Constance, for bringing us all together.
I'm a connector.
You are a connector. You are a connector. You just celebrated a birthday. How was your birthday in New York City?
It was many decades long, my birthday. I was just, well, as the character Nani Mame says, I'm between 40 and death, darling. Yes. I'm younger than John.
Yes, that's true. Right.
But not by much.
I just celebrated my 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, that's my
right.
God.
And you celebrated it. You celebrated it with us.
That's right. Yes. That's right. We've started this sort of annual pilgrimage to La Quinta, which is near Palm Springs, because Constance and Sam escaped the New England weather for a couple of months and ran a house, and we've shown up for 2 years so far in a row, or 3?
I think it's 3. But tell Alan about your original connection to Bill, because that's also a reason we do.
Well, this. I'll bring up Bill. Yeah, 1967, I think.
Well, they also timed it. So Bill Devane and his wife are there because they live most of the year in Montana, but during the winter months, it's even colder in Montana than it is in New England.
Wow.
And so they come down and we sort of all have a reunion.
But tell them, John, tell them how long, right. Tell them how long you've known Bill and why and how. It's such an interesting story.
Well, Bill I've known since I think 1969. We were in a play, an off-Broadway play, which was a real cause célèbre called McBird. There I am.
There it is.
And there's Billy Devane and Paul Hecht. I can't remember who that is. It was quite a cast. It was Stacy Keach and Rue McClanahan and Cleavon Little and Stacy, and Billy and myself. And it was an interesting play that had started at Yale. And the idea was to combine the Kennedy assassination with Macbeth. And so the implication was that McBird, who was Lyndon Johnson really, was implicated in the murder of Kennedy. So it was a terrific, scandalous, satirical production. And Billy and I met. I had never met Billy, and we showed up at the first day. He was playing Bobby Kennedy. I was playing Teddy, who was played sort of as a moron. I had a cat's cradle I used to do on stage, and so we showed up for the first day of rehearsal, and we're leaving, and we're taking the same train uptown, and the same subway. And so we get on the subway, and Billy turns to me and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, what do you mean? He said, you don't know what the hell you're doing, do you? You have no idea what you're doing. That was my, so that was the beginning. That was the beginning of a 50-year-old friendship.
I was going to say a very long friendship. Was this recently, Constance? Was this what?
This is recent, yeah.
Yeah, this was this winter.
Yeah, that's a great picture.
Yeah, look at that young woman with all those old coots.
I
know. Oh my God, you guys are adorable. So there's Billy, there's my husband Sammy, and there's John.
Incredible. Yeah. So what was it like when Billy came to join Knots?
Well, unfortunately, John wasn't there anymore. So when
he was gone by then.
Knots, right, because they were married to the same woman.
Yes, they were. Yes.
The reason Billy supplanted me was that I had a nervous breakdown and the marriage split up. So I left the show too. So that's when Billy came in. I came in and directed a couple after that.
Oh, well, I'm going to ask about directing.
And he was an unbelievable pain in the ass. He never wanted to do anything I asked him to do. It was sort of
hysterical. Well, 46 years ago.
About Billy.
Oh, go ahead.
Billy and I ended up on an episode of Lois and Clark, which is that with Terry Hatcher and I forget who the guy playing Superman. But yeah, and I was playing a mad scientist who manages to bring back from the past all these mobsters from the past, and Billy was playing Al Capone, whom he insisted on calling Capone. And so everybody said, what? He said, well, that's the correct pronunciation. That's the Italian pronunciation. So the director said, yeah, but nobody says Capone. He says, well, I'm going to say Capone. And that's what he did. So.
Wow.
That's funny. So 46 years ago, Knots premiered.
Yeah.
Do you two remember meeting for the first time?
No.
Well, I guess we met on the set,
Yeah, I don't think we met before we shot. The read-through, yeah, right. But I don't think we met prior to that.
No, we didn't. I didn't know anybody actually on the show except David, David Jacobs, who was the writer-producer, and David was is my wife's ex-husband.
Will you share how your wife Lynn
gave me a little edge in the casting? So
Well, he gave Constance a little edge too. Will you tell fans how Knots got started, John, and the role your wife Lynn played?
Sure. Let's see. I don't want to go back too far, but we moved out. David had no interest in being a screenwriter, but he wanted to be closer to his daughter, Albin. And so he eventually moved out. And Lynn started representing him as an agent. And first of all, David was a big movie buff. He was almost a scholar of film. And so he knew a lot about film. And he had written a bunch of young adult books. He was quite a successful magazine writer. He wrote a lot of articles for the New York Times on architecture. And he worked for the Book of Knowledge and everything. And so he had written a book about the police, a young adult book for the police. And Lynn got a job on The Blue Knight, and he did really well on The Blue Knight. And after The Blue Knight, he worked on Family, which was quite a celebrated show. And then this little pilot came up called Dallas, and Lynn got him that job on Dallas. He had actually pitched Knots Landing before Dallas, and they didn't want to do it. And then when Dallas was such a hit, they brought him back into the network and they said, what else would you like to do? And he had a couple of ideas, and the executive said, well, didn't you have that show about all those families or something? Well, how would you like to do that? And so that's how Knots came about.
Wow, that's incredible. And Constance, you met him on his first series, right?
Yes, he did a series called Married the First Year. And they needed a woman to play the mature husband's second younger bitchy wife. So when my husband, who could that be? When my husband was working on the lot in a miniseries, he went over to shoot the breeze with the casting people. I told you this, Alan, already, but I'll tell you again.
Yeah, people want to hear it.
And he was doing this thing called Studs Lonigan. He goes to the casting office and they're all in a tizzy because they're trying to find this bitchy second wife. And Sam goes, oh, my fiance would be perfect. And they said, who's your fiance? And he said, Constance McCashin. Oh, we never thought of her, blah, 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 blah. So they bring me in for Married the First Year, and I get the bitchy second wife. And I don't know how long. I guess it was did it ever go to series? I don't remember. Anyway, and that didn't work out. So I went to David's house for Christmas, some Christmas cheer, and a nice Jewish boy that he was. And he gave me the script to Knots Landing and said, I wrote this for you. And she wears a lot of pastel colors. That's all he said.
That's incredible. Both of you, getting these roles, quite.
Well, I didn't sleep with David's ex-wife, though.
But John, you initially didn't want to do episodic, right?
Me?
Yeah, you when this role came up.
I had done a lot of episodic because I came out in 75, right after we got married. We moved out, and I started to work right away. I actually had a writing job, and I was doing an episode of The Law. And I went to the commissary to have lunch, and Milt Haberman was there, who was the head of casting. And he said, what are you doing here? And I told him, and he said, are you still acting? I said, yeah, I'm trying. He said, well, what are you doing after lunch? I said, nothing. I said, I have another meeting, but I can. He says, well, come with me. So he brought me in to audition for a series with George Papard. It was a medical show, and they needed a bunch of residents, and I got it. So I started working immediately, and I really worked pretty much nonstop. I mean, I did all those shows at Universal, which was, I get residuals now for 15 cents. And I can't even remember the show that it was. But it was a lot of work. And then probably the best thing I did, which happened a few years before Knots, was I played Lee Harvey Oswald in a 4-hour miniseries for ABC called The Trial of Lee Harvey Oswald, which was actually a terrific piece of television. And so, I had done a couple of features, but I didn't really have a big feature career, mostly in television. And this was a great gig for while it lasted.
Did they have to convince you to do it, or you were open to taking the role?
No, I mean, it was a nice. The pilot was good, and it seemed like a kind of a good thing to have a steady job all the time. And, it's great working on a series for a while because if people get along, which we all did, it was an amazingly consanguineous group of people. We never really had any personality problems at all. I mean,
it speaks volumes. You all still hang out. What is that?
This is the DSM. These are personality problems all in one book. Sorry.
But I mean, seriously, you all are still friends. You all.
Well, no, not really. I mean, Constance and I and Sam. I mean, Sam and I have a more recent history because he cast me in this play actually with Pedro Pascal. We've been joking about this because what was this, about 16 years ago? I guess
he
so,
was
yeah.
Pedro was like 26. Yeah, he was very young, very young.
What project was
It
that?
it was basically, I mean, there were four actors in it, but it was pretty much a 2-character play called Gizmo Love, and it was done at this little theater in Wellfleet, and Sam asked me whether I wanted to do it, and it was a great experience. We got friendly again. We were in contact again, and the show was a hit. It was really good. So that was the revival. But we then didn't really see each other in between, did we?
I'm just trying to think. The thing about Pedro that was so funny, though, because he and Sam, my husband, were just communicating about this today because Pedro's on the cover of Vanity Fair. So Pedro, my husband had seen Pedro do a show in Washington, D.C. with Jane Alexander, and he just thought this kid was really talented. He happened to be down there visiting friends. So he wanted to reach out to him to see if he would do this play with John. And he called him, and Pedro said, "I don't have to audition." He goes, "No, you don't have to audition." He goes, "Really?" He goes, no. And that might have been the play for the summer before, because he did 2 seasons at the Wellfleet Harbor Actors Theater. He did Gizmo Love, and he did a Ken Lonergan play called Lobby Hero. And then he did Horatio in the Boston Common in Hamlet also. So 3 summers he was with us. The summer he came up to the Cape, I don't know whether it was John's play or the other one, they wouldn't let him stay at the actors' quarters with his dog because they said people were allergic to his dog, who I think was a pity, but I'm not sure. So Pedro ended up staying in our guest house in Cape Cod with the dog while he was doing the play. But I don't know whether it was Gizmo Love or maybe it was Lobby Hero. But remember when Julie came to see the show, John? Oh, my God. So we surprised John. And Julie Harris had a home in Chatham, in Chatham, Cape Cod, not far from Wellfleet. As a matter of fact, we had bought a house in Chatham really because of Julie, because we had visited her there and fell in love with this town. So we bring Julie to the play. It's a very wonderful little theater. She's sitting in the front row. John doesn't even know she's there. And Julie had a very distinctive laugh. And so John, being the consummate actor, was funny, but he heard Julie laugh. I don't think he broke character, but I do think it threw you a little bit, John, when Julie laughed, because this theater was small. He could see her sitting right there.
No, but I could see her. I could see all of you in the first row. I mean, I was no more than 6 feet away from her.
But I don't know if you realized she was even there yet. And Julie obviously was, won more Tonys than anyone in the history of theater for acting until her record was broken not long ago. But, as someone said, if a bear pooped in the woods, she would pull up a chair and watch. I mean, she was an amazing performer, to say the least, and a big theater lover. But she got so much pleasure, John, out of seeing you in that play. It was wonderful, because the 3 of us were in this town we had never been in, all 3 of us together before, and Sam had directed you and asked you to do it, and you did a wonderful job. And Julia is sitting there, the first woman of the American theater, and it was it was great. And this little known actor named Pedro Pascal that nobody knew who he was.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Julie, what was it like, being on Knots with her and hearing her stories? I'm sure, John, being a theater lover, did you just, want to hear everything she had to share?
I hardly had any. I don't think I had any scenes. When did Julie come in? What season?
The second year.
Second year.
She came in the second year of the show. Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of scenes with her, as I remember, but what was really fun was the first Knots I directed, which they wouldn't let me do until I left the show. There was a bunch of scenes with Julie, and the most fun was directing Julie, because I was a little reluctant to give her direction, but she was so amenable to being directed that you would give her one little suggestion and she would do 5 things that were better than what you suggested. So that was really a pleasure.
Yeah,
I mean, not all of the
thrilling.
actors took so well to my direction as Julie did. Julie was the most cooperative.
That was thrilling. That was
professional.
Thrilling.
That's a professional.
Right.
Yeah.
Constance,
Really
the last
thrilling.
time you were here, the fans were clamoring to have access to be able to watch Knots Landing. First, Plex started airing it, and now Amazon Prime, and fans can buy it. What took so long? Do you feel the excitement that is out there in the universe that, both of you, that Knots is now, having a resurgence with?
I mean, curiosity, we watched the pilot, which was sort of fun. First of all, I mean, to suddenly see yourself, 40 years ago was quite a shocker. So, but yeah, I mean, I didn't look. I thought the show was a pretty good show. I mean, it wasn't, it wasn't Hill Street Blues. It wasn't, I don't think it was the same level as some of the top shows that have been on television, but it was very workable. And in the first few seasons, which was kind of nice, it really tried to tackle some interesting issues. I mean, the rape show, that where Constance,
the lie,
gets raped, that raised real issues at a time when those things weren't discussed that much on regular network television.
100%.
So, what?
I was watching it this morning as I was getting ready, and my husband wasn't watching the screen, but he could.
So lovely way to start your day, Alan.
Yeah, I know, but he could hear the music, and he was like, "What 70s show are you watching?" Like he could tell right away it was something, But you're right. I mean, that was the 4th episode into the series.
Yeah.
That's
really diving head first.
And it's interesting. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead.
But I was having this conversation with somebody else a while back that I can't, I don't remember all the ramifications of the shooting of the episode, but there was no such thing as an intimacy coordinator back then, right? So when you were dealing with subjects that were uncomfortable for most people, or maybe just uncomfortable for you, or maybe uncomfortable, by the way, for the perpetrator also, you didn't have anybody there other than the director, but you didn't have an added resource on the set to not protect is not the right word, but to be sensitive or compassionate, to basically say, okay, this is what's in the plan. Are you okay with this? We can, because listen, 1 out of 4 women are raped, usually by somebody they know. So that statistic was true then. It's probably even 1 out of maybe 3.5 now. But so that type of subject matter, to what John said, wasn't being tackled. It was done actually on All in the Family, though, which was a big controversy when they did it on All in the Family. But it wasn't being tackled, and there was no real. There was a wonderful. I don't know if you remember her, John. There was a wonderful woman on set who did wardrobe named Marty, and she was this young woman, maybe about our age, who in fact had been sexually assaulted. And can I tell you, she was, and just because of the type of person she was enormously helpful and she was very protective. She was extremely protective because the wardrobe gets damaged, and anyway, they're all this matching. But other than that, it was kind of a lonely place to be, actually.
Well, now, I mean, there are a couple of things that are quite the world of television and film is quite different now than it was
Sure.
when we were doing sex scenes. So, and there wasn't, there was hardly any nudity at all. I remember
I don't know, John. I don't know. People went to bed with just their tidy whities on.
Yeah, but the big shocker on Hill Street Blues was when one of the actors took a shower with these two people took a shower together, and that was a shocker at the time. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story. I'll tell you how prudish they were at the network. I was the first one to be seduced by Donna, and this scene took place in a hot tub. It was a hot tub scene. So we showed up. It was a woman director named Kim. I forget her last name, but she was a good director.
Friedman, Kim Friedman.
Kim Friedman. We showed up for this scene, which we were shooting in the morning, and the prop guy at the time was kind of a drunk. And what he had forgotten to do was to turn on the heat in the hot tub. So we get in this hot tub. It was like February or something, and it's freezing. It's freezing. And Donna says, we can't shoot in this thing. It's too cold. So they kept bringing out buckets of hot water to pour into the hot tub to make it warmer, but it never got really warm. So the way the scene went was we're in the hot tub. We're not naked. We're, she's wearing a bikini top and I'm wearing a bathing suit. And so at a certain point I said, would you like a massage? So Donna says, sure.
Wait, whoa. Did you say it just like that, John? Would you like a massage? Did you say it just the way you just said it now?
Probably exactly like that. So I said, would you like a massage? She said, oh, yes. So she turns around and I took the straps off of her bathing suit. And then I started to massage her. And because she was so cold, she went, oh. Well, it looked like she was having an orgasm. And so when the network saw the dailies, they cut out the shot where Peter straps off because it was too risque. I mean, when you look at, I looked recently at this series, Our Friends and Neighbors. I mean, the sex scenes in this show are just, they're amazing. So I can understand needing an intimacy coordinator for some of these things. But at the time we were shooting, there wasn't too much that we couldn't handle. I mean, did you have problems when you did the rape show?
Well, I think an intimacy coordinator is also necessary for if there's a scene involving a pedophile, and the pedophile actor playing the pedophile might need some help. So intimacy coordinator could be a lot of things, not necessarily related to the sexual act. And the rape scene, if I had been raped in my past up until that point, that would be a very, very difficult scene for me to do unless I had had gobs and gobs of therapy. And even then it would be difficult. So I think there's a lot of instances where people could have used a little extra support even back in those days, and it was nobody's fault. It just wasn't available. So I think it's not just the scenes of a strictly sexual nature between two consenting adults. I think there's a lot of areas where that those resources are well used and well deserved and definitely necessary, personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of like network and what stories you were telling, I mean, it's Pride Month, Constance, and, when you were on the show, they explored the, friendship with you and CG, played by Lisa Hartman.
Now, you know why I'm laughing. You know why I'm laughing? I told you this before, Alan, but it bears repeating because John was a big part of it. When Lisa and I were allegedly
yes, I know. Yes, but wait, that's a big deal. like that they were even exploring it at that period.
It was a very big deal, and I had the mullet to prove it, back in those days too. I mean,
So
no,
tell the story, because it's
okay.
great.
This is such a great story, and John was so funny, so darn funny. So I was nursing my son on camera. Hello, nursing my own baby on national television, and playing my baby, which is brilliant casting. The casting department really went way out on a limb. And she and I are sitting on the couch with our backs to our front door, John's and my front door. And he's in my arms, my son, who's now 43. And Lisa and I put on mustaches. I had a little red one and she had a little blonde one. You remember this, John? And John comes in the door, and he already doesn't like this character anyway. He's threatened by her, whatever. So simultaneously, we turn around. Okay. Again, it takes a lot to break up John. A lot. I swear to God. Of course, we had the gag reel in mind. We turn around and he sees the mustaches. I don't know what my son was doing. I probably dropped him. And you did lose it, John. It was pretty darn funny. It was pretty darn funny. Oh my God. That's my best memory from 9 seasons. That to me was, because I thought Not Many was a comedy.
Laughter's the best medicine.
We also did a great. See, I don't know whether you remember this, but it was a scene in the morning, and I was wearing a robe, and it was a Japanese. I happened to have a Japanese robe that someone had given me, and Constance is in her robe, and it was an argument, right? So we went to do a take, and so I went. And Constance goes, "Oh,
now this is very racist. This was very racist, John. Very racist.
In our fake Japanese.
Okay, I blocked that one out. I don't remember that one at all.
Really fun.
I don't remember that one. Oh my God.
That's amazing. A fan reached out to me this morning. He's finally watching Knots Landing, and he was struck by your TV marriage, where he felt like it was basically physically and emotionally abusive back then. Richard had an affair with Abby.
Did I abuse him, or did he?
I think both. Did it strike you guys? Do you recall it being
it seemed like a fairly realistic relationship. I thought. Didn't you think? I mean, it was hardly all hearts and flowers, because Richard was sort of
really,
right? And so sort of built in.
I felt, I don't know. I think we were an interesting pair. I think that people wouldn't have necessarily seen us together ordinarily, and I think the fact that we were put together as a couple. It's I think it made for interesting work.
It worked
personally,
It truly worked.
The princess and the asshole. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. Excuse me. That slipped out. I'm sorry.
Never marry your chicks of fantasy.
Oh God! Be careful what you wish for. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the problems on the show, which I helped solve, I must say, was that once.
You had me convert. You had me convert, John. Is that what you had the character?
No, we didn't do that.
Oh, okay.
We didn't do that, but I wrote the last episode of the first season, which was a 2-part thing about Ted
his alcohol
falling off the wagon and becoming a drunk again, and it was a pretty good script. So they sort of invited. David wanted me to write more scripts, and so I was in on some of the planning in the second season of where it should go. And the problem was that you had these 4 families, right, that lived on a cul-de-sac. That was their only connection. Well, I don't know what your experience is of having neighbors, but we barely know our neighbors. I mean, we see them in the street and we say hello, but you don't want to get too friendly with your neighbors, because if it turns out that it all sort of falls apart, then it becomes very awkward, right? So you keep a friendly distance from your neighbors. And so I, coming up with storylines which involved all the people in the cul-de-sac became increasingly difficult. If you actually look at the episodes in the first season, they sort of go from family to family to family. They're problems that occur and have to be solved within that, by that couple. And I said, look, the only way you're going to have a story that opens this up is to put them in business together somehow. So that was what started the storyline of Ted working at the car dealership, which led to his involvement with these crooks who end up engineering Murray's death. And the reason it was a death was after the second season, the end of the second season, he didn't want to do any more shows. He'd had it for 2 seasons, so they couldn't figure out what to do with him. So I said, "Let's kill him." They said, "What do you mean?" I said, "If you kill this character, a main character on the show, every time one of these characters is in jeopardy, the audience is going to be fearful that you're going to kill them too." So that's what sort of started. I mean, David, obviously, David and Mike Fireman were, really drove the storylines, but these were 2 suggestions that sort of opened the show up a little bit. And, the thing was fun, was writing for all these actors. I ended up writing 9 episodes.
Do you have a favorite, Night, which was about you guys, I will ask about, but do you have a favorite, I don't even know if it's the script that you wrote, but a performance of somebody in one of your, scripts? Like maybe it's Ted and the Booze, or, somebody. Do you remember like being, wow, seeing them,
Well, Ted was great in that. I mean, it was funny about that script though, because I wrote that script, and then they had pink pages of the next draft, and I had written all this really nasty dialogue between him and
Val.
And Val, right? And it was this sort of nasty, drunken humor, and Ted had wanted all of that cut out, and I went to him. I said, "Look," I said, "it's not going to come off as funny. It's going to be cringy. It's going to be unpleasant." And he said, "Okay, I'll try it." And he gave a terrific performance. I mean, none of us knew when the scripts were being written that he actually he was an alcoholic who had, reformed. And he was and we actually had the scene where he starts drinking again is a celebratory scene where they're celebrating his, I think, getting promoted at the car dealership. And there was all this champagne, and I was pouring the champagne. And Ted came to me and he said, "Is that real champagne?" And I said, "Yeah, I think so." He said, "Well, please don't pour any into my glass." And so we did one take with, ginger ale or something in his glass. And he came to me after the take and he said, "You have to be really careful not to spill any alcohol in my glass." And then he told us that he had a terrible alcoholic, and any alcohol could trip him into falling off the wagon and becoming an alcoholic again. So it was this was something he had lived. And so it was a very powerful personal performance. But
Wow.
I say the show that I liked doing the most was not one I had written. It was a comic show. Actually, it was a comedic show that I did. It was all about sex and all this stuff. And I think who ended up? What am I? My mind just went blank. Kevin and you know, who was the character? Who was
Michelle?
Michelle and Kevin kept trying to have sex. Every time they wanted to have sex, something interrupted it. And so finally, the payoff was that she. This is a great picture. I don't know who. Somebody sent me this picture. It's just terrific.
I think Michelle. Did Michelle just post this for your birthday, Constance?
Her birthday actually was on the 24th. Mine was last week, but John sent that to me this past week or so. So
I
don't know where that was.
I think Michelle posted it for your birthday.
You got a lot of chest hair going on there, Pleshette. You look pretty darn virile.
Yes, I know. So Michelle decides to get dressed up in a corset and black stockings and stiletto heels and this very sexy outfit, and come with a raincoat and come into Kevin's office and strip, right? Open up her raincoat. And so that was one of the scenes of the show, and it was all about sex, and it was a lot of fun to do.
I love that. Constance, Michelle posted that 1 week ago for you. She said, wishing one of my best friends a happy birthday. Michael Maloney, who's a writer for Soap Central, he said, and I know you do because we talked about this last time, realize how much fans were impacted by your death. But Michael was a page at CBS at the time. And he said, I had a shift at the switchboard the next day. And he goes, fans were not happy.
And nor was Laura.
nor was Constance.
Not happy either.
No.
So what do you want me to say?
I wasn't happy. Ms. Texas 73 said that episode was so funny, John, the one you were just talking.
Oh, really? Yeah, it was a very funny episode. I mean, the writers didn't like it because I changed a lot of stuff that was in the script, so they were furious at me and never invited me back to direct again.
Well, anyway, nobody can carry off a bustier the way Michelle could. She looked divine in that stuff.
So she looked great.
Yeah.
She kept coming in and saying, "What do you think of this outfit? What do you think of this outfit?" So that we finally came up with an outfit. But yeah, we had fun. We had a good time doing the show, I think.
Well, and fans love it.
People in Granada Hills got to build pools for themselves.
Huh.
All the people in the cul-de-sac, once we established the cul-de-sac, they knew they had us. So.
They definitely did. When did it hit both of you that the show was a success? Was there a moment you were out on the street or something? Like, do you remember?
I don't know. I guess you get things that, oh, you look like, what's her name? The red, it's kind of red, blonde, reddish. That's just soap with the soap opera, the spin-off thing. And yeah, I know I get that all the time.
Well, I get it. I get it, and they don't know who I am. The same thing. So we were in New Orleans, and we were in a restaurant, and this woman keeps looking at me, and finally, I'm about to get up and leave, and she said, "I know you. I know you. I know your face. I know you. How do I know you?" So I said, "Well, what do you do?" She said, "Oh, I'm a registered nurse." I said, "Were you at that medical conference that was in Atlanta last year? And she said, yes, I was. I said, well, I'm a neurosurgeon. She said, oh, doctor, so nice to meet you. Well, it was so nice because ordinarily I'd have to say, oh, my name is John Pleshette, and I'm an actor. Well, what have I seen you? And then I got to start listing all my credits and everything. And so from then on, every time somebody didn't know who I was, I would do the same thing. And I would say, what do you do? And I'd say,
and then you went to medical school and here you are.
Yeah, right.
That is amazing. That is a great.
For one thing, in those days, we knew we were a hit. You know, when the numbers said we were a hit. I mean, everyone would wait for the numbers after the show ran. There were only 3 networks, right?
Yeah. The next morning, you knew. Yeah.
Competing with each other for the numbers. I mean, it got to be sort of interesting. Because when the show became sort of international, I was on vacation with Lynn and Sophie, my daughter, who was 8 at the time, in St. Bart's, and all the beaches are topless in St. Bart's. So we're down to the beach, and I go in the water, and the next thing I know is three sort of older teenage girls, 16 to 8-year-old girls, these gorgeous girls with beautiful bodies, jump in the water and they start swimming around me and they're going, California Sud, California Sud. Well, that was the French version of Knots Landing. And so they were just thrilled, as was I. So
crazy.
But
crazy. So I'm going to name your co-stars. What comes to mind? You know, Michelle Lee, Constance.
A mensch. She's a mensch.
She
really is. She's a mensch. She grew up in the business. Her dad was the makeup artist on Dr. Kildare. I saw her on Broadway when I was 14, and she was probably 19 in How to Succeed. If someone had said to me, you know, to that star of that show, you're going to work with her someday, I go, no, I'm going to be a special ed teacher. Forget it. That's not going to happen. And I ended up working with her. I mean, I saw her in Seesaw too. No, she's the real deal. She's the real deal. Very family oriented, she's the real deal.
Yeah, she was fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, well, fans were asking really, John, because Karen and Richard had a special friendship too.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, that relationship. So I had a lot of stuff to do with her, which was fun. I probably worked with her almost as much as I did with Constance, I think. But she was fun to work with, and all the actors are easy to get along with. I never had any problems with anybody, and I mean, we didn't have our. And I think this is probably characteristic of a lot of shows. You work with people, that very intensely, all the time, week after week, and you don't really want to socialize with them. I mean, we were friendly, but were you socially friendly with anybody on the show while the show was going?
Yeah, we used to go to Santa Barbara all the time and see Don and his wife, actually, a lot.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And Sammy used him in a series. He used his daughter in a series. We saw Julie a lot, because we lived in the same town.
Well, you had a real friendship with Julie, yeah, and that probably grew when you bought the house on the Cave.
Yeah, and then when Joni did a Tennessee Williams play in Hartford, we brought Julie there to see it. We got her a driver. He brought her up to Boston, and then we took her to Hartford. I mean, we really, we spent a lot of time. And Sam directed Julie in a bunch of stuff too, actually. I'm trying to think. Yeah, probably those two.
What did he direct her in?
He directed her in an episode of Family Ties. He directed her in, I I know he directed her in something else. Family Ties. Oh gosh, I know there was something else. I can't remember whether it was a play or whether it was a television show. No, it wasn't Moonlighting. Yeah, I don't remember. But she was really, that was pretty amazing. All these actors, by the way, like John, were all stage trained actors. And so you have this ethos that they all brought with them from mostly New York. And I think that also contributed to the fact that everyone worked as a team, you know?
You mentioned that the last time, Constance, about everybody. Did you learn from someone specifically? Like, did you just absorb everybody around you?
You know, I think I remember sitting in the car with Don Murray, and I was such a good Catholic girl. I'd seen the Hoodlum Priest conservatively 5 or 6 times, and not to mention Bus Stop. And I'm sitting there with him and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is just like, oh my God. I was a little starstruck, you know, I really was. And especially when I met John Pleshette, I was just over the moon. I was so starstruck when I met John Pleshette. Yeah. And like I said, I saw Michelle on Broadway.
And you must have been over Michelle if you saw her.
Yes, definitely. And, you know, Donna had done Broadway. Joni had done Broadway. Michelle, everybody had done theater. Everyone, I don't know. There was a common work ethic. How about that? A common work ethic. That's what it was.
Well, I think one thing that I learned on NOS was what film acting was, you know, which is very different from stage acting. And, you know, doing this every day in a kind of non-threatening environment was really helpful. I mean, I learned a lot watching Don Murray. You know, Don was a really wonderful film actor as well as a stage actor. Yeah.
It was pretty. Yeah, we were lucky. We were lucky, John. Very, very lucky.
You definitely are. I mean, to just see you all together at this stage too. Did you two have a process? Like working together, like, did you like to
if we did, I don't remember it.
I mean, look, the process is, you know, you learn your lines, you come on, you usually run the scene and block it for camera, you know, and then you go off to your dressing room and wait till they light and come in and shoot. But I think, you know, you have to have a sense of communication with the people that you're working with, and they have to be receptive to that. And I guess my principal training was with a teacher named Sandy Meisner, and Meisner's whole premise was that audiences, they watch the actors, they're not watching the characters, and if they don't see the actors reacting to each other, if they see an actor does something and the other actor doesn't seem to react to it, it doesn't seem real. And so that was my training, and that was, you know, it was really helpful for film, because so much of it is just thinking the right thing, you know, not projecting what you're trying to communicate, but trusting the fact that if you're thinking and feeling the right thing, it will show in your face and in your body language.
And maybe you'll have a good director.
And maybe you'll have a good director, and maybe most of the time the directors kind of left you alone, you know, because everybody knew their characters. You know, if you come in as a director on a show like this, you're basically trying to service the script and come in on time, you know, because the pace of shooting is impossible in episodic television, you know. And I think the first show I shot, they had 7 days to shoot. The second show I And from then on, it was like 6.5 days. Well, that may seem like not much, but half a day is an enormous amount in television, shooting, 6, 7, 8 pages a day.
I bet.
I mean, I think the budgets now probably, the budgets are much bigger and they take a lot more. They take the same time. You watch a show like Handmaid's Tale. I mean, they really take time to shoot that.
They really do. John, a fan, Diane, wrote to both of you and said that the fans for Knots Landing on Facebook and Instagram are so grateful that you both, speak so fondly of the show. But she mentioned that Richard was, that there were many fans on there who loved Richard Avery because he was the underdog that people just didn't understand, even though he could have been a lot nicer to Laura.
That kind of sums it up, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
It's so
It
true.
is a fun character to play. It's always fun. It's always much more fun to play the bad guy than the good guy, right? I mean, I had done nothing but bad guys for Universal. I don't think I ever played somebody who wasn't a villain of one sort or another.
And Constance, Laura must have been fun too, because they gave you a lot to really tackle.
Yeah, I was lucky that the character got to evolve over a long period of time. She got to sort of come out from under her rock and, experience her own skill set and find herself. And that was exciting, that was very exciting. So, and be a mom. I mean, I was pregnant twice on the show, and one kid was on the show with me. Unfortunately, the second kid wasn't on the show because her mother died of a brain tumor. So that didn't work out. She didn't get to be on the show because the character died of a brain tumor. Sorry, the character died of a brain tumor.
The character died. Ken just said Laura was the character who really hooked me into Knots Landing.
Oh, that's nice.
Great.
That's very sweet.
That's nice.
Very, very sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, I love seeing, the excitement, the fact that people are going back and watching from the beginning,
And they're going, God, they got old. What happened to that?
No, the first comments they were saying are that you are so beautiful.
Oh, John or me?
You.
Oh.
You.
When's the next time you two will see each other in person? Do you have
John's going to come visit after I think you drop your grandson at camp or you go to pick him up. I can't remember. We're going to see you sometime at the end of the summer or in September.
Yeah. We have a whole trip.
Yeah, they're going to come. I think they're going to come to Boston and stay in the Billy Devane Memorial bedroom over the garage. Bill was here last year. That was a trip. Oh, Bill's actually coming again the end of July. He and Debbie are coming, actually. Yeah.
That's amazing. Constance, do you have a favorite episode the fans are asking?
The favorite episode, I know this sounds, oh gosh, I was going to say the haunted house one. That house burned down actually in the fires. It's also used in Hacks.
Oh, no. Yes, I know what house.
The haunted mansion. Yeah. I love when I had my son in the back seat of a Mercedes. John made a funny comment. I can't. Oh shoot! I hope I get this right because my son is 6'4" right now, and he said something to the effect, "I'm glad we didn't have him in the back seat of a Volkswagen because he was a big baby." Anyway, I can't remember, John. It was much funnier when you said it. Much funnier, but yeah, John and I have an accident, and he delivers the baby in the back of the car, and it was kind of. I mean, that was.
Yeah, actually. That was an episode I wrote, and my father was an obstetrician.
Yes, so that's right. That's right.
So I consulted with him about the delivery in the back.
I hope you paid him. I hope you paid the old man when he gave you some help.
I did.
I love that you had somebody who you could trust to go to.
Yeah, I did, and then I think I at one point. That's right. At one point, you start sort of reciting the Catholic liturgy or something. And I went to a church, I consulted with a priest, and you're sort of hysterical, and you start intoning in Latin something, sort of a prayer, like a Latin prayer.
Oh my God.
So
This were nuts.
One of the fans, Joe, just said, Laura reading on video after the death to her motherless baby, one of the most powerful scenes. It still gets to me.
Well, yeah, that was, yeah. And Larry Kasha directed those videotapes, who was a wonderful, wonderful man, who ironically, he's passed away now. He was a producer on the show, but he had directed Michelle in something when she was 18 at like some review or something in Hollywood. And then cut to many years later, he ended up working on the show, but he directed those. And even though the conceit was a bit of a, you know, an odd idea, he did a wonderful job, and I felt very comfortable. Again, he made me feel comfortable. I mean, that's not an intimacy coordinator type of scene, but he made me feel comfortable in what could have been a very uncomfortable, you know, in terms of life and art overlapping. Yeah. And I just had a baby, literally just had a baby. So
yeah, that's a difficult scene to shoot.
Yeah, I was hormonal on top of everything else. So there you go.
John, before, acting, writing, directing,
cooking.
Somebody said you got to take the pots.
I didn't tell Alan that.
You didn't tell me. One of the fans did.
No, that's so funny. Oh my God, that's so funny.
That's a funny story, because I came up with this idea that Richard opens a restaurant. And so there are a bunch of scenes where I was cooking. And I do all the cooking at home. I'm quite a good cook. And so there was this big, tall, she looked like an ex-Vegas showgirl that was around the set. And I didn't know what she was doing there. So I asked her, I said, I don't mean to be rude, but what are you doing here? She said, well, I'm a product, I work in product placement. And so what I try to do is place products that we represent, in the set. So I said, well, there were all this great kitchen equipment. So I said, well, there were all these Cuisinart pots. And I said, if I use these Cuisinart pots every time I do a cooking scene, you think I could get some freebies? She said, sure. So I made this date with her, and they had offices in Burbank, and I went to these offices, and it was like a fence or something for stolen. Every room was piled with Toshiba microwaves or, stereo players and everything. And then we went into the Cuisinart room, which to me was like the cave of Alibaba, if you're a cook. And I said, how much can I take? She said, you can take whatever you want. So I took an entire set of pots for myself. I'm still cooking with those same.
They're hanging in his kitchen. I can vouch for this.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
John, what is your best meal?
My best. He's such a good cook. He's such a good cook.
That's hard. You know what, Alan? I'll send you the link to my website. And I'll put you on a mailing list. And you can scroll through and pick a recipe.
I'll pass it to the husband. I'm not very good.
No, John's
husband.
good.
Yeah, I
really
try
good.
to put up one recipe a week.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, please do send me the website so I can put it up on YouTube for everybody. So that for anybody who doesn't, somebody just said, "Wow, talk about getting your money's worth out of some cookware."
I did, yeah.
Constance, Michael Maloney, the writer who had a question earlier, said, "Are you familiar with the Knots Landing Pizzeria in Chatham?"
Oh Christ! It's so. First of all, the food. Oh, I shouldn't say anything. That used to be well, that restaurant's been there for years. The actual physical kind of set of that restaurant, the structure. but they did call it Knots Landing, maybe in homage to Julie. I don't know. Although Julie, unfortunately, it'll be 11 years this year since she's passed away. It'll be 11 years this summer, actually. And she would have been 100. She was born in 1925. So it's been a while. But that restaurant, I'm just laughing because it's so corny. I of course I'm aware of it. I've been going there for 40 years, but I'm just the Chatham's changed a lot. It's
That's
used
funny.
to be. They used to call it a drinking town with a fishing problem, and now it's become very shishi. So I don't know, but I am aware of the restaurant.
Okay.
Yes, I am very aware. Of the restaurant.
Last question, because somebody just posted it, and their screen name is Seaview Circle. Does anyone know where David Jacobs came up with the name for Knots Landing?
No,
I think don't you think it has kind of an East Coast sound, John, like Sneeden's Landing? I mean, it has sort of an East Coast, even though it's on the water ostensibly here there in California, but but it has kind of that East Coast sound.
Yeah, because I've never actually heard any West Coast sea resort or anything that has the word landing in it.
Landing, I agree with you. Yeah, it's very northeastern in sound, but yet obviously a Southern California.
I mean, look, the Knots was sort of inspired by a movie called No Down Payment, which was about a bunch of families moving into a cul-de-sac. And
on the GI Bill, yeah.
Was it
using their money from their GI Bill, right? Yeah.
Said it was about, it was pretty much the same setup, and he thought he would see it would work as a series. So he took that idea, and that's what. So I don't know where he got the name from.
Yeah.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah, I guess so.
Such a pleasure to have you both here. Thank you. I know,
Good.
Constance, you've had a long day with patients. So,
well, this is the same thing. I just feel like this is a continuation right here.
Yeah, actually,
you're doing best work. Thank you.
I wanted to discuss with you when you have a moment, Constance.
Off camera, darling. Off camera, sweetheart. Off camera.
Wait, what were you going to say?
Problem I'm having with land. So.
You meet me in my office. We'll talk later.
Yes. Okay.
Congratulations.
Alan, this was great. This was great, Alan. Thank you so
Congratulations
much. Congratulations
on
on
50
John.
years. And Constance, next time you're in New York, I hope I get to see you.
All right, my dear. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you both so very much.
Bye, kids. Bye, kids.
Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody for watching. What a amazing time that was. Memories of a show we all absolutely loved. Thank you, Constance, for bringing John to the locker room. Please join me tomorrow evening when As the World Turns alum Jill Powell joins us for a special Pride Month conversation at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. This Broadway star, advocate, and proud lesbian mom will share her powerful journey from stage to LGBTQ+ activism. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, you can do so down below. If you liked tonight's episode, please click the like button. It always helps. And if you like to stream audio versions, just search The Locker Room on your favorite podcast app. Have a great evening, everybody. As always, stay safe.